Dr. Rob, what do you think of our new surroundings here?
I like the change up a little bit.
Yeah.
It's got kind of a bar feel to it.
Well, Owen's not here. I mean, you've watched me walk around here with my head like a chicken with his head cut off. And, when Owen produces this whole thing, and I'm starting to realize how hard that kid works because I've been here
there's work involved.
I've been here for like 5 hours getting stuff ready for the podcast, and I'm doing some of the work that usually takes place afterwards, so I'm not here till like 9 o'clock tonight. But I'm starting to realize I'm not paying that kid enough. Not even close to paying that kid enough.
Okay, that's going to stick to the tape.
I know it's going to stick to the tape. As soon as he gets the new studio done, I can start paying him. How's that? So it's a quid pro quo. You need to get this done first.
All right.
Now, Owen is actually in San Diego, California. So, Owen, if you're watching this, I hope you're having fun on Coronado Island. I know he's going to we're recording this on Sunday. He's going to the Avett Brothers.
Oh.
Yes, tonight.
That'd be cool.
Right on like the ocean, they've got like this amphitheater that's in a shell. Kind of looks like the Sydney Opera House.
Yeah.
And that's where he's going to go see the Avett Brothers tonight.
Well, that'll be cool.
Now, did you get any country music over the weekend? Because you were in Oklahoma City, right?
We were. It was kind of a whirlwind college visit trip to Oklahoma City University.
I had no idea there was an Oklahoma City University.
There is Oklahoma City University. NAIA school, very successful athletic programs. I think they maybe don't quite catch the public eye as much because they don't have football. On the flip side, very good baseball, very good softball, women's basketball. They're kind of an NAIA powerhouse for softball and women's basketball, good men's basketball, and very solid wrestling and soccer programs. Within their history, I believe they currently have 76 national titles.
Oh, wow.
Across all sports programs.
Now, did Piper leave impressed? Because I know she's got Lehigh on the mind, but did she leave impressed?
It is, but it's kind of a growing program. So they actually have, I got to double check, it's 2 or 3 national titles under their belt in the last 25 years for women's wrestling. They've had some really impressive wrestlers go through the program there. They had a little bit of a down period. They just got a few years ago a new coach who's kind of in the process, has kind of flipped the program a little bit and has them kind of doing some pretty impressive stuff right now. So it was a very impressive visit. Great facilities, great location in Oklahoma City, a lot of stuff to do there, excellent academic institution. So it was kind of a cool trip.
It's always fun to go on college trips with your kids. I'm going back to Savannah in November, so that'll be fun. My kid's pretty much has visited one school and narrowed her choice down to one school. So that's what I'm stuck with. We're going to Savannah, Georgia, and now she's officially been accepted. So
that is awesome.
We're off and rolling. Hey, if you're new to the Doc Talk Podcast, or if you've come back before and you have not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to the channel, but you won't regret it because we have so much content that comes out. Of course, the podcast, and then tomorrow and Tuesday, or I should say Monday and Tuesday, the Doc's Diagnosis presented by Centris Federal Credit Union. On Wednesday nights, we go live with Behind the Point Spread with Scott Spreitzer. We take a look at 5 games, 1 in the NFL, 1 and 4 in college football, and we really dive in deep. Scott offers a plethora of knowledge around that. And also, if we do a special podcast or just anything else, we're able to put it right up there. So subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you found us through Husker Max, I cannot say enough about David Max and Joe Hudson. They are so kind to distribute this podcast for us, and we really do appreciate it because Husker Max is the authority when it comes to Nebraska-related sports news. And David's such a great guy. So is Joe. But if you found it on Husker Max, thank you so much for finding us there. If you listen to the audio version of the podcast, you can subscribe across your favorite podcast channel. We host on Podbean. That's where it originates, but you can find it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, all sorts of good things. Before we get started, you've heard us talk a lot. Do you have your G-Defies on today? Oh, you do. I
do have my G-Defies on.
We can't put our feet up very high, but we're both wearing our G-Defy shoes, and for good reason. And true story, Rob, I pulled a muscle in my back last week. I lifted with my back and not my legs. And I did it with one arm. So I had a bunch of stuff in this arm.
Maybe you're just old.
And like the pain wouldn't go away. I walked outside with my G-Defy shoes, and I haven't been wearing them since, and the pain has alleviated. And I do attribute the shoes because it's getting my hips back in the right place, right? And
it does help with alignment. I was going to say two things for me. Ankle pain, not so much some knee stuff, but kind of some low back stuff.
Yes.
But ankle and low back were the big thing where it helped me a ton.
Yeah, the alignment is where because when you walk, you can feel yourself become aligned. You're like, oh, that's the way I'm supposed to stand. The cool thing about G-Defy shoes, there's a number of different styles. You can get sandals, you can get work boots, you can get tennis shoes, you can even get kind of dress shoes. So go to gravitydefier.com. That's gravitydefier.com. Enter the promo code DocTalk when you check out, and on an order of $100 or more, you're going to get a $20 discount. Against that, Doc Talk at checkout, you're going to get a $20 discount on orders of $100 or more. What the hell are you drinking?
So, okay, Jason Werner, he's our guy.
He's our beer hookup.
He's our Pennsylvania beer hookup. So he gets a lot of stuff out of the Northeast. So you remember Sound of Music?
The hills are alive, baby.
With
Do, re,
the
mi,
sound
fa, sol, lo.
Exactly.
Or whatever.
You go. So,
all I knew is that Liesel was it Liesel? She was the hot one, right? Liesel?
I don't know.
Come on.
That seems
the
kind of weird.
The oldest one was hot.
Wasn't she like 16, dude?
Yeah, in that movie. But now I can say that because she's past that age. I know that's a little creepy, but she was hot.
Kind of weird.
And since the movie was made in the 50s or 60s, I'm not going to feel bad about it. Julie Andrews was hot too, by the way.
Well, I'll give you that, but at least she was like...
Come on.
Dateable age at the time.
Come on. Well, I wasn't born yet.
All right. Anyway, so Von Trapp family leaves Austria, immigrates to the United States.
They come to the United States to be a singing group, right?
Exactly. They started a beer. So you actually have Von Trapp Family Brewing.
I had no idea.
Based out of Vermont on the Von Trapp family grounds of their... They got like an estate, the Von Trapp estate, brewed on the estate ground.
Really?
Yeah, right here. It says so on the can, so you know it's true.
You wonder how true the movie and the play is to like their real life. I mean, how much was dramatized?
You can Wikipedia. I mean...
Do you trust Wikipedia?
Well, okay, hold on. Is Wikipedia on the internet?
It is.
Then it and chemtrails are true. It's a thing.
And we didn't go to the moon. So
exactly. Oh, my God, you're killing me.
Ross Peterson, my radio host in Des Moines, he is all into the chemtrails, man. He will go down a rabbit hole of chemtrails. He starts thinking really weird stuff.
Okay, so here's my logic on this.
Okay.
Climate change not real, but we can control the weather with chemtrails.
Apparently.
Explain.
I can't, because I told him he's crazy. I believe climate change is real. Now, whether it's man-made or natural, because the Earth has gone through a number of climate changes over its history.
We've had a few ice ages.
Yeah, it had a few. You had a few. But no, I don't buy the chemtrail thing. Don't buy it all. Yeah. And people are going, well, I thought this was a football podcast. It's a football podcast. But
we've gone into ghosts in the afterlife.
That's
before,
right.
So.
And we talk a lot of beer. Yeah. The beer's killing me because I haven't had a beer since April. I'm now
okay, well, I just popped open the second. This is I got two, and I just popped open the second one because I thought you weren't drinking.
I'm not drinking.
We're not drinking beer.
And I'm not even drinking. Now, this is a Tito's glass, but I'm not drinking vodka. It's just water. I'm below 200 pounds now.
He says it's not vodka.
I'm below 200 pounds.
Cheers, by the way.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
You look great. I hope you feel great.
I feel really good. Now, I will say this. I think Owen's challenged me to try to get down to 185. Here's my problem that I've noticed. I feel great, but I need some muscle mass. I've lost a lot of muscle mass.
Yes. Okay, so here's a question for you. When you lose weight like that, and you do lose muscle mass when you do go on a diet like you did, are you going to be okay with the idea that if you start... I don't know what your plans are, if you're going to do some body weight lunges, throw some push-ups in there or whatever, but if you start putting on a little bit of muscle mass and that weight starts creeping up, but it's muscle weight.
Yeah.
Is that going to bother you?
No, because my man boobs will probably go away and my belly will go away, right? I mean, I've lost a lot of my belly. I've lost a lot of my man boobs. They're still there. I'm still probably a small B cup. But because I understand what muscle's healthy.
Yeah.
Yes. So I'm okay with it.
Okay.
That's why I would like to get to like maybe 185 and then put 10 pounds of muscle back on and be at that 195.
Start throwing some iron around.
I just got to stick to it. I'm scared. I mean, I've yo-yoed before. You remember back in 08, 09, I lost this much weight and I put it all back on. I mean, you've yo-yoed before too. I mean, we all do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've been down to 250. It's kind of scary saying that, been down to
Yes.
I'm back up to like 280.
My highest ever was like 256. When I started this, I was at like 250, 248, something like that. So,
well, you look great.
Thanks, man.
Congrats on the weight loss, and go hit the gym and throw some weights around.
You know, Husker fans have always given me a hard time because they know I'm an Iowa fan. And the last couple of years, they've won ugly. And they're like, oh, my God, you're not that good. And I always said an ugly win is still a win. Rutgers yesterday, an ugly win, but it's still a win. You're 5-1. There's nothing to be ashamed of about that.
It's not. And right now, I kind of, I put this question out on Twitter that it seemed interesting to me about this game, that going into the game, it seemed like Rutgers had a lot of respect. And I'm talking about from Husker fans I've talked with, sort of the general vibe of the fan base was like, wow, this is a big game for Nebraska. If we win this, we're sitting in a pretty good spot as far as the season goes. You're win away from a bowl game. This is a big game for Nebraska. And Nebraska wins, and everybody's like, yeah, Rutgers sucked.
Who cares if they sucked?
But I don't think they suck.
I don't either.
Now, I will say this. Okay, so quick side question for you. You mentioned Iowa.
Yeah.
I've got a fair amount of respect for Iowa this year, and it's the same old Kirk Ferentz Iowa stuff that I do respect. The O-line has solidified. First time in probably
it's been about
three years that Iowa's offensive line has been a really, really solid unit. Run games churning out yards, which actually it was not a bad game running the ball for Iowa yesterday. They got a couple of NFL tight ends on the roster. Still playing strong defense, still got strong special teams. They got smoked by Ohio State.
Because Ohio State's just elite.
Okay, so here's my question. This is my question for you as an Iowa guy. You watched the game. I saw several highlights. I did not watch any of the Iowa-Ohio State game. How good is Ohio State? Are they really that good?
And here's the
because I thought Iowa was at worst a pretty damn solid team.
Defensively solid. It was 7-0 at halftime, but Iowa had forced 2 turnovers. It was just elite talent. You had playmakers at the skill positions that could just do crazy things, right? And
the one-handed touchdown catch, it was amazing.
Yeah, you're just and the crazy thing is that game got over. I'm like, wow, they got their butt kicked, but it didn't seem like it.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
It was methodical. It was just methodical.
It was inevitable.
Yeah, it was. And heck, Iowa could lose a couple more yet this season. Wouldn't surprise me at all. But Nebraska's 5-1, one win away from bowl eligibility.
Well, so that's my question. When you look at Nebraska, and I'm kind of extrapolating the Iowa game to Nebraska, you look at the Big Ten Conference, and right now I'm kind of wondering, okay, is there really anybody other than Ohio State? It seems like it's Ohio State, probably Penn State.
Well, Oregon's ranked number 3. I'm not sold on that yet.
I'm not sold yet on Oregon just because they looked a little – they won, but it was kind of sketchy those first 2 or 3 games. And then after that, I mean, I got to be honest, I kind of forget. You forget about Oregon a little bit. I mean, Washington had the quote-unquote upset win over Michigan. I'm not sure how big an upset that is.
I'm not sold on Michigan at all.
I'm not either. They've got some quarterback problems.
And now that win over USC looks less impressive because USC got beat at Minnesota.
Yep.
So
Minnesota has not had a strong season up to this point.
I know the Big Ten wants 4 teams in the playoff, and I'm like, boy, I I don't know.
I see 2 to 3.
Well, just because they're going to get it, right?
Yeah. I think they're going to get 3. I don't know if they get 4, but I guess my point is that the vast majority of the Big Ten, I think it's teams like Nebraska, Illinois, Indiana,
Iowa.
Iowa. Wisconsin had
Illinois.
Yeah, Wisconsin had a big blowout win. Maybe they're kind of shoring a few things up and turning a little bit of a corner there. I think there's going to be this huge group of teams in the Big Ten. I don't think there's a ton of oh my God, these guys are horrible. Purdue maybe.
Purdue's
but
bad.
you're going to have. I truly think probably about 8 or 9 teams, 9 or 10 teams even, that are all going to be kind of playing football at about the same level. And it's who's going to be able to come in and not have the mistakes, can gut it out and grind out wins like Nebraska got against Rutgers. Because I think a lot of these teams are they're not elite teams like Penn State and Ohio State and maybe Oregon, but they're kind of these good, solid Big Ten teams that are going to play pretty solid defense. They're going to have an okay run game. Hopefully they're not horrible special teams like Nebraska showed. But it's going to be kind of one of these. You're going to see a lot of these ugly wins, and I think that's going to be kind of the norm for Nebraska this year. Yeah,
there's not UCLA maybe a tough game. I doubt it. But I think the rest of them are going to be just kind of what we saw against Rutgers. Yeah. You brought up special teams. Matt Rule doesn't have a choice now, does he? Foley's got to go.
I have a hard time, and it's one of those things. I hate talking about firing a coach because it's one of these things that they're people. They've got families. These are guys that they've put their whole life into this business. But it's one where results
matter. And anything you do.
Results equal accountability in this business.
Yes.
If the results aren't there, you're accountable for it. It's a very cut and dried business in that regard. And so I feel bad about talking about this. But, oh, my gosh, I'm looking at this going, okay, we've got some very, very good athletes on this team. It's not like, okay, we just don't have the horses to field. We got an offense. We got a defense. You know what? We're out of guys. We don't have enough guys to field good special teams units. They're there. They've got very good athletes to put the athletes out there and perform on the field. You've got a kid in Buschini who's he had 2 60-plus yard punts. He had, on the fake, at this point, it's one of those, they're just saying, screw it, we're going to fake punt now. Completed the pass to Jalen Lloyd on the fake punt. The ball was on the money. You've got a guy like that. At what point do you say, okay, you know what, the schemes just aren't happening? The whatever that messaging is that's going from the coach to the players is not happening. And I feel bad when I look at that and you see a guy like Foley who seems like an outstanding guy. Huge amount of buy-in to Nebraska, this state. The high school programs, few guys have bought in harder to establishing relationships with the high school programs in this state than Foley has. And I think that does count for something. That's a huge part of local recruiting. But the production on the field's just not there. And I keep going back. It's so easy for us because we know Coach Bush. We've had him on the podcast a couple of times. You've got a guy who is a highly regarded coach.
Recruiter.
And it's everywhere from special teams through D coordinating.
Yep.
You've got a guy who is a highly, highly experienced coach. Now, I don't know if Coach Bush wants the job at this point in time. I think he's kind of taken a little bit of, I guess I'd call it sort of a coaching sabbatical. Time with family. He's doing the media thing down in Lincoln.
Doing the public speaking thing.
He does an amazing job with it.
No pressure.
And I've talked with a few people who've had him in as a speaker at events, leadership conferences, things like that. They said he's amazing.
I hired him here at MCL to do our all company meeting, and he was fabulous. Probably the best speaker we've ever had.
Outstanding. And the reason he's good at that is because he's a great guy. He understands how to communicate with people, and he understands how to get that message across, which is why he makes a great coach as well. And all of a sudden, I mean, I understand the fans' frustration with special teams, with the lack of productivity, with the mistakes we're seeing. And I try to stay objective about it, but I'm at the point now where I'm sitting here going like, oh my gosh, you've got a guy in Lincoln. You don't even have to have the guy move to here. He's already here. Well, I don't know. And again, I don't know if Bill wants the job.
Well, I think he would consider it because he's called Nebraska his dream job anyway, and he wanted to stay with Coach Rule. And it's common that new coaching staffs come in, bring their own people.
And I get that. I wonder if it's time to, now that it's
enough time has passed.
It's year two. Maybe it's not working with this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, another example would be, and Nebraska got 7 points out of it, but the first touchdown they scored in the first quarter, that was a 4th and 2 situation. Under normal circumstances, you're taking the 3 there.
That early in the game.
Yeah, you're kicking a field goal.
I do like what I've seen out of Nebraska's offensive line the last couple of weeks. And I say that it's a little bit of a patchwork unit, but they've done some really, really good stuff. You saw Mazuka back in uniform on the field. I think I even said on this podcast, I'm pretty sure he's gone, and he's not. Whatever issues he's having to deal with off the field, I hope he's doing okay. I hope he's dealing with those issues. Well, because I love watching him play, but I like seeing him out there. But you're also seeing Henry Lutovsky, Mount Pleasant, Iowa, coming into his own and playing some really, really good football at that right guard spot. Now, let me be clear here. I'm not saying Lutovsky's like a surefire NFL guy. But, I mean, this is the first time I've looked at a guy and gone, okay, this guy's moving like an NFL guy in terms of his movement. I think Evans is kind of near that category. I think Mazuka is near that category. But all of a sudden, I'm like, man, these guys move. They get in space. They're getting pancakes. Lutovsky, we're going to do it on the Doc's diagnosis. He has a really nice job play right before the 2-minute mark in the first half, comes out, gets in space, great block. He had earlier in the game on a screen pass. Like I said, it was 2 or 3 pancakes on one screen pass. The guy is playing at a fairly high level right now, and this is a guy that you looked at and thought, well, he's got the tools in the toolbox, size, speed, strength, height, reach, to get the job done. And I don't know if we've necessarily seen it, and all of a sudden we are seeing that out of Lutovsky now. And then you're looking at Evans at left guard, who is just, he's kind of turning into the next, in my opinion, he's like the next Ben Scott. It's kind of that guy on the offensive line that you notice because you don't notice them. They're kind of going out and doing their job every play consistently, and they're that solid performer that you almost don't notice because they are doing their job with almost no fanfare. So I'm still liking what I'm seeing. I really like what I'm seeing from the guards, especially with a new kid like Lutovsky in that lineup. Going for it on 4th and 2, all of a sudden situations like that become feasible when you've got an offensive line that you can trust a little bit. And I think these guys are playing well enough now that the coaching staff trusts them to make those plays in those particular situations.
I mean, you gave the highest grade, I believe, to the offensive line this week.
I did.
Now, they gave up 4 sacks.
And it was. And I mean, if somebody was like, are you grading on a scale? I'm always grading on a scale. And I think my reply was, this game I probably graded on on a sine curve, but they weren't great in a lot of ways. The pass blocking still needs to get shored up. The sacks got to get cleaned up. You got to protect Raiola. And there's times that running game did break down where it's like, hey, we need 3 yards up. We didn't get it. Okay, well, you got to fix that. I mean, when you need 3 yards, you got to be able to go out and get 3 yards every single time. That's something that they're going to have to clean up on that offense. On the flip side, when I look at a kid like Gunnar Gatula, who's a redshirt freshman, and I've said it a few times, and I think I'm probably going to comment on this again during the diagnosis, but you got a kid who I think is playing and has given us the most stability at the left tackle spot since Teddy Prohaska was a true freshman. So that was, 2021?
Yeah. He seems like Teddy Prohaska's, if he does come back, who knows what's going to happen with Teddy, but he's going to be one of those guys, he's going to be like a 30-year-old guy playing the line because he's been there so damn long.
But it's like right now I look at Gatula, who he's kind of holding his own. And I mean, for a redshirt freshman to come in and do that and just at least be somebody that you're not sitting there going like, oh, God, we're dropping back to pass. What's going to happen at the tackle spots? Because that is something we've worried about before on this offensive line. It's nice seeing that. I mean, it's like, God, I haven't been able to say that for a while. It's nice seeing a guy like that where you're going, oh, my gosh, here's a redshirt freshman. He's playing solid. He looks pretty darn good. And he's got, and from a ceiling standpoint, that ceiling's here. He's still down here. So you've got a guy that's got the tools again, that he's got the reach, he's got the athletic ability, was a very good athlete throughout high school, that I think, this is a kid that he's going to keep getting better. And all of a sudden I'm going, okay, well, maybe we now have that left tackle for the next 3.5 years. That's a good thing. I mean, these are some of the curves, the bell curves I'm grading on when I look at this. And I look at Lutovsky where I go, okay, well, here's a guy that has had tremendous athletic talent, tremendous athletic ability, haven't really seen it translate onto the field yet. And now all of a sudden we're seeing that translate onto the field. There's few guys on the team that I've seen who get in space and can take on the DNs, the outside linebackers, the safeties, and they're consistently making those blocks out in space on pulling plays.
Nebraska rushed for a net 97. Take away the sacks on Dylan Raiola, you got 137 yards rushing in the game,
which is not great. And I mean, you can't blame it on, well, we didn't have the ball that much. I mean, time of possession was pretty equal. I think it was about a 1.5 minute difference in time of possession.
Yeah, Nebraska had it 31-35.
Yeah, so it's not like we had the ball for 22 minutes and just didn't get a chance to rack up the yardage. It was a grinded out game. I mean, it was 2 yards here, 4 yards there, going for it on fourth down, getting a big pass play when we needed it, when we really needed it.
Do you like running back by committee? Because that's still what they're doing. You got Dowdell, 14 carries, Ramir Johnson with 5, Emmett Johnson with 14.
I kind of felt like Ramir was sort of making was really kind of making hay there in the first half. If you got a guy that you look at and you go, okay, this guy's he's kind of getting in a rhythm here, I wish they would just leave that guy in.
Well, in Mark Berner, who was a coworker of mine here at MCL Construction, he was just here talking to you beforehand. I think he only had one carry in the second half.
I think it was just 1 or 2 in the second half.
But if you have a guy that is carrying the ball well, getting yards in the first half, why do you get away from it?
I do think, one, they're trying to keep a number of guys happy. Number two, I think you've got guys that do bring different strengths to the position. I mean, I think Ramir's a little different than Emmett, who's a little different than Dante. I mean, you've got 3 or 4 guys at that position who I think all bring something different. I think Dowdell's the guy they're looking at as, okay, here's our power back, here's our short yardage guy. But I'd like to see. I want to see Dowdell run on a first down. I want to see Ramir on a third and half a yard. I want to see these guys in those different situations, but I would like to see them get a little bit more continuity during the course of a game. I appreciate the fact that we've got 3 guys that all bring strengths to the table. On the flip side, I do kind of wonder if the running game might have a little bit more consistency. If somebody does look like they're having a pretty good day, leave them in and just see what kind of rhythm they get.
Yeah, just ride a horse, right? Just keep. I mean, that's what I was doing with Caleb Johnson. You just and they're pretty deep at running back. But sometimes running back by committee, you don't get anybody that gets into a rhythm. I would think much like a quarterback gets into a rhythm, I would think a running back gets into a rhythm.
And it happens at every position in football. If you're out there on the field for a certain amount of time, that does happen. And it is a little bothersome when you see a guy, okay, God, this guy's looking pretty good. We need to pull him off, though, and we're going to get somebody else a couple carries here. It's like, that does frustrate me. And it's not like, and again, I hate going back to here's Rob going back to the 90s. When I played, God, we went 4 deep at running back with NFL guys. Calvin Jones is backed up by Lawrence Phillips, who's backed up by Damon Benning, who's sharing reps with Clinton Childs, and you got James Sims behind those guys. And, here comes freshman Amon Green. And it was just one guy after the next. So, it's not like they put one guy in and that guy only carried it for every single snap for 4 straight series. You had some other guys working in there. But, if one guy got a rhythm, you leaned on that guy, and he was going to get those 20, 22 carries in a game.
Yeah, it'd just be nice to experiment with it. You've got time to experiment, and nobody's really broken out, and I don't think it's going to hurt them at all, do you? Not with those guys I think they're all capable, I guess what I'm saying.
And that is a good point. I do think all of those guys are capable. But it might also be a situation, in terms of, and this is a little bit of a bigger picture take on this. Mm-hmm. It might be a case of, hey, like we're going to need Emmett at some point. We're going to need Dante at some point. You keep recruiting these guys. You heard Coach Rule talk about one of the things with the transfer portal and NIL is that you kind of got to recruit the guys you've already got. Is there a degree of that involved here in terms of making sure, hey, if it's not going to hurt us, let's spread those reps around. Let's make sure everybody gets a few carries. Now, that being said, you look at Nebraska's offense right now, it's not the old school power eye where it's a power running offense. You got a quarterback who, he's a throw first guy. Raiola's not taking off and running. He's a throw the ball, get it downfield through the air kind of guy. And you got an entire other set of weapons there that you've got to utilize, that you get to utilize. You look at the tight ends. I would still like to see Carter Nelson getting some more, get some more opportunities to make catches here. You look at Borkirker. He might be the best tight end on the team, and he hardly gets a pass thrown his way. You look at some of these other younger guys like Ja'Cory Barney Jr. Just guys who can absolutely blaze. Jalen Lloyd. You're seeing guys who were starters a year ago are now sitting second, third string on the depth chart. So there's some talent down there. And it's only so many reps that each of these guys get. But if you don't feed the ball to these guys at least a little bit here and there, are they going and hitting the portal after the season's over?
Maybe. But that's you're going to have to recruit like that. You're going to have to recruit knowing that you're probably going to lose a fourth, maybe half of your recruiting class when you come in because they're going to want to go find.
And unfortunately, you're probably right.
Yeah. You mentioned Dylan Raiola. We've said all along there would be a freshman game, right? We said at some point this season he's going to show that he's a freshman. He showed that he was a freshman against Rutgers. A
little bit of happy feet. Now, again, he got sacked 4 times. I'm not sure I blame him there on that.
He got tossed around like a rag doll a couple times.
He took some hits. Now, you got a guy who's like 6'3", almost 230. The guy can take a hit. He's not whining to anybody about that. So but at least in terms of like executing the plays, when you've got that kind of pass rush, that's going to disrupt a quarterback's rhythm. He had the interception. This was the first interception that you're looking at going, okay, that was completely a recognition problem on Raiola. He didn't see the guy. He didn't recognize what the defense was doing in that situation. You got an outside linebacker sitting there just sort of lurking behind the defensive line. He just pops up, grabs the ball as Raiola throws it. It looked like that's who Raiola was trying to get the ball to during the play, and it was just brutal to see that when it happens because it's just one of these blazingly obvious interceptions that it drives you nuts when you see it. But it was just that's a recognition thing. As long as Nebraska wins the game, there's some of these situations where I'm kind of glad Raiola sees this.
Because you learn from it.
Yeah. You know what? Let's have a game where the pass rush is kind of a bitch and gets after and you get sacked 4 times. Let's have a game where the defense disguises something. You don't recognize it and you throw this, oh my God, how did you not see that type of interception? You get a few of those under your belt. And when Nebraska wins the game, it makes those kinds of situations, those kinds of mistakes acceptable because you won the game and you're sitting there going, okay, you know what? I've heard every interview with this guy that's been out there. You've seen him interact with the other guys on the team and with the coaches. He's a heady kid. He's got a good football IQ. He's going to learn from this stuff. And it's, you know what, if you're going to have a game like that, thank God it happened in a win.
Yeah, no kidding.
So, go take your lumps and get some learning opportunities here in a game in which you actually win the game. And I mentioned it earlier. I think Rutgers is a pretty solid team. I kind of feel bad because I think, again, I've said it already on this podcast, that going into the game, they had a ton of respect. As soon as Nebraska wins ugly against them, everybody's like, well, it's a win. We're 5-1, but God, Rutgers kind of sucked. I'm like, okay, well, they didn't suck before the game. Why do they all of a sudden suck now?
Well, you got to perspective is everything. You're not Ohio State, right? And you got to understand.
And I get that.
But fans need to realize the day and age of blowing teams out in a league are over.
Unless you're Ohio State. And I get that, but that was kind of my point, that I think Nebraska's in sort of this pretty large middle grouping in the Big Ten where you've got 7, 8, 9 teams that are all really, really solid teams. And if any of those 2 teams play each other, it's going to be a freaking dogfight. And whoever wins is going to win ugly, and it's going to probably be kind of a close game.
Hey, if you think I've lost a lot of weight, which I have, 52 pounds, you need to go see Scotty Strunk down at Husker Hounds. That guy's melting away, too. He looks great. He's fit, and he's even more rejuvenated. And with each and every win, he gets more and more excited to sell you some great Husker gear because he has the largest selection in the state of Nebraska. 2 locations in the Omaha area. The Superstore at 84th and Center is just packed full of anything you can imagine. Hoodies, T-shirts, yard knickknacks, head decals, the tattoos, you name it. The dude has everything.
Decals.
Is it head decal or headgear? What's a corn head? A corn head, all sorts of different things.
Corn heads.
Yeah, it's not a decal.
A lot of hats.
Actually,
he's got the best
volleyball gear. Basketball season is just around the corner, so get your Husker basketball gear.
Come get your great.
Well, nobody listening to this podcast is going to say, "Yeah, I'm going to go get." Well, Connor Orr will.
All the J-skers are,
because Connor Orr is a J-sker, right? But we'll get to Connor in a second. But go to Husker Hounds, 2 locations in the Omaha area, also at huskerhounds.com. We mentioned Connor Orr. He's a lawyer, a good friend of the show. He just posted on his Facebook page. If you find Orr Law Group on Facebook, posted a picture of his brand new office. It's beautiful. He's expanding. More lawyers are coming in. If you need litigation, if you need estate planning, just some legal advice, Connor is a great guy to contact and discuss with. And make sure you tell him you heard it right here on the podcast. Go to orlawgrp.com. That's orlawgrp.com. Ask for Connor Orr, and you will have your legal needs taken care of. Defense continues to. Is it impressive or not? Because I think it is. The number, they give up some plays, but they don't give up a rushing touchdown to Rutgers. What does Rutgers do? It runs
That's
the
all
football.
they do.
They've held how many teams?
Nobody has scored. We're 6 games into the season.
Yeah.
We're halfway through the season, and they have not given up a rushing touchdown.
That's crazy.
Well, and after the second blocked punt, Rutgers had the ball, first and goal at the 2-yard line.
Yeah.
They stopped them. 2 running plays, 2 pass plays, but they came out, stopped them. They had a first and goal on the 2-yard line. I thought that was pretty impressive.
Also, they held Rutgers to 264 total yards, held 13 consecutive opponents to fewer than 400 yards. Now, that 400-yard mark is a pretty high bar, but 13 straight under 400 for how bad Nebraska was a year ago.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it is.
No, they've done a great job. And if there's a unit when I do the grades that I probably downgrade too much, it's probably the defense. I think they've played outstanding football the last year and this year. The Illinois game, there was a little bit of, you and I talked a little bit after the Northern Iowa and the Illinois games that God, is this maybe, was last year smoke and mirrors on the defense? Because I said Northern Iowa.
Northern Iowa.
So Northern Iowa, they ran the ball. They controlled the clock against this defense. And those were things that Rule talked about after the Northern Iowa game. They were going to have to shore up. You saw some of that as well with Illinois, where it looked like Illinois, when they really needed yardage, when they needed to convert those third downs, Illinois got it done. And that was something that it looked like in a game that Nebraska really needed the defense to step up and take charge was the Illinois game, and it didn't quite happen. Now, that being said, you go back and look at the big picture of the first 6 games of the season, and all of a sudden it's kind of, okay, well, maybe they weren't quite as bad as we thought they were after that Illinois and Northern Iowa games. The rushing touchdown thing's impressive.
It is. It really is. It's the little things.
It just is, yeah. They're keeping teams out of the end zone. They kept, I think, 2 straight first halves that they've kept opponents out of the end from scoring at all. They goose eggs there against Purdue and against Rutgers.
You think Tony White's head coach next year?
Yeah, I think he's gone. I think,
and that's a good thing.
It is. Either he gets a...
And what I mean good thing is guys want to progress their careers. They want to be head coaches.
It is. And Rule has talked about this before, and he's talked about it in regards to Tony White, that you want to be the program where guys come to because they know they're going to get better, they're going to look impressive, and they're going to go on and take that better job. And part of the reason that you want to be that program is because then the next great coach is looking at you going, okay, I'm that up-and-coming D-line coach, but I really want to be a D coordinator. You need to go. You need to apply for Nebraska. Their D coordinator position just opened up. If you're that guy who's a really good up-and-coming defensive quality control guy, young guy, Nebraska's defensive line position opens up. You want to be, if you're truly that talented up-and-coming coach, you want to look at Nebraska and have that be kind of like, okay, this is my next destination. This is the spot I want to go to. And Rule has talked about that and verbalized the fact that, hey, I want this place to be a place that coaches want to come to, learn at, and uses that stepping stone, because that's how you attract better talent, better coaches, is by being that type of program.
And I would say not every program's like that. Some people like the stability of keeping a group. Tom Osborne loved the fact that his core group there. Times change.
It is. And as well, and as a player, even in the 1990s, even then, 1980s, 1990s, that was a total anomaly. To look at a coaching staff and sit there and you're thinking, holy cow, how long have all of these guys been together? I mean, we're looking at half a dozen years, decade, that all of these guys have been together on one single staff. You just don't see that anywhere. I mean, it's very rare to see that. Usually you see that turnover. You see guys moving on. But you want to be the program that attracts those younger guys. You want to be the program that attracts talent. One of the things I always really appreciated about Saban and his program at Alabama, there was the one, I'm blanking on his name, but he had a running backs coach that was there for the entire time. But otherwise, I mean, you had a number of guys that came through. I mean, Kirby Smart comes in, great defensive coach, leaves to take the head job at Georgia. Ton of success there.
Lane Kiffin, Steve Sarkisian.
You had all
guy at Maryland.
I mean, it was almost a revolving door at some of those upper level offensive positions. I mean, everybody talked about the whole, like, the Nick Saban school of coaching rehabilitation. But it's, but that's the kind of program that, I mean, if you're an assistant coach, you want there to be some place you can look at and go like, okay, here's sort of that. I know everybody talks about it as a destination job. There can be destination stepping stones, and I understand that's kind of an oxymoronic phrase, but that's what Alabama was for a lot of these coaches. If you went there, you knew you were working with the best. You had the best head coach. You had the best support staff. You had the best fellow assistants. You were going to be working with the best athletes. That was going to be your opportunity to truly show what you could do as a talented, young, up-and-coming coach. And for a lot of these guys, that has completely played out in reality as they've gone on to great jobs. When you look at Lane Kiffin and Sarkisian and Smart and some of these other guys that have moved on from there, I think Rule would love to have Nebraska be a program like that where if Tony White's gone, that's okay. We're either going to make Knighton our D coordinator or we're going to bring some other really, really good defensive coach in to be the D coordinator.
So we're 6 games through the season. Not asking you to grade everyone, and I'm just spurring this on you now. What would you say at 5-1 the overall grade for this team is? You want to break it down by position group real quick, or just overall? Just overall. B-, C+, B? It's not an A.
I wouldn't call it a B. I mean, it's C+, B-. I mean, the wins are there. I think Nebraska has played opponents that are commensurate to the level of talent and capability that Nebraska has shown thus far. And when I say that, what I mean is I think Nebraska's been evenly matched or better than everybody they've played. I mean, Nebraska was way better than UTEP. Nebraska was way better than Northern Iowa. Nebraska was way better than Purdue, and that game should not have been as close as that was. I think they were measurably better than Colorado, but all of a sudden Colorado's 4-1.
That was like a wake-up call.
Yeah, the only game they've lost is Nebraska. And I don't even know if I'd say Nebraska was a wake-up call. I mean, you'd like to think North Dakota State was a wake-up call. I mean, that was a closer game. And that was at home. I mean, that was at Colorado, for Pete's sakes. Now, North Dakota State, if you followed them, they're playing some good football right now. My heart goes out to Coach Farley in Northern Iowa after that one.
Well, they got beat by South Dakota State.
Yeah.
They got North Dakota State, I think, next week. I mean, it's a brutal schedule.
It's been rough. So
B minus, C plus.
Yeah, and I mean, here's the thing. I mean, you're halfway through the schedule. Nebraska's not running the table. I mean, I still am sitting here going, I'm still thinking 7 wins. I'm kind of.
I mean, Indiana's going to be tough. We'll talk a lot more about the Hoosiers next week, but Indiana's unbeaten.
I think you got a first-year guy. Who is it? Kurt Signetti's the coach there.
Signetti, and
he's got them playing really, really good football now.
And the cool thing about Signetti is, everybody wants to hire the young up-and-comer. This guy's 63 years old, and he did exactly what Deion Sanders did. He overhauled that entire. He basically brought all of James Madison to Indiana, but I mean he overhauled the roster. He did it quiet. Didn't come in and go, I got my own luggage and it's Louis. He just came in, did his thing.
There's different ways to do it. Now, the other thing that you got to look at, and I think Jeff Schwartz, former Giants offensive lineman, he's got a podcast. He does a lot of broadcast work. He's a great follow on Twitter. Really knowledgeable guy. So he's a University of Oregon grad. So he follows the former Pac-12 schools, especially those teams that have moved to the Big Ten. And, I mean, he was commenting on USC that, Lincoln Riley kind of did the whole, has continued to follow the whole Deion playbook. It's like every year there's this turnover, a lot of portal guys. It's a Deion-esque roster overhaul all 3 years that Lincoln's been at USC. And Jeff points out the fact that he goes, okay, they're basically on their 3rd year of first-year offensive linemen. That's not a good thing. And that's why, I mentioned earlier, talking about Nebraska's offensive line, when you're looking at Evans, when you're looking at Lutoski, when you're looking at Gatuli, you're seeing these guys who've been in the program for a few years, and you're seeing some of this development so that when you lose a Teddy Prohaska, when you lose Corcoran, you get a guy who is this really solid, stable performer in Gatuli who stepped in and has continued to perform. And he's only a redshirt freshman. He's a high school recruit out of Lincoln. USC doesn't have that right now. It's this turnover thing. And so there's right ways to do it. There's bad ways to do it. The question is with Signetti at Indiana, now that he's got a little bit of this stability to the program because of the talent he brought in, does he go into build and develop mode? And I think if you do that, you're going to be fine. I mean, sort of the comparison I make, again, you go back over the last 25, 30 years, about the closest thing we had from my era to the transfer portal were the teams who would just absolutely pull in tons of JUCO guys.
K-State.
Bill Schneider at K-State was all in on the JUCOs. And from a career standpoint, it's kind of hard to argue about his career. But you did see this ebb and flow within the program where he'd have, it was like a 5 and 6 year, 6 and 5, 7 and 4, and then a couple of 10-win seasons. And then all those 2-3 year guys would graduate, and boom, you're back down to 5, 6, 7 wins a year for a few years. And then a couple of 10-win seasons. And then it would kind of, I don't want to say crash again, but it kind of crash a little bit. That's what you're going to see with the teams that are sort of this, they go make or break with the transfer portal like Deion's.
Well, let's use Florida State as an example, right? I mean, really good year. Now they're they're crashing.
And they did. And I mean, if you look at the guys, you look at Jared Verse, you look at their quarterback. Oh my gosh, I'm blanking on his name. Had the bad knee injury. But I mean, they pulled in a couple of
kid from Clemson.
Yeah, they pulled in a couple of other D linemen. This year, they got DJ, who was at Clemson, then at Oregon State, now at Florida State. I mean, they're not. I mean, the kid. I hate to say it, he probably peaked in high school. I think he's an outstanding athlete. He just can't read a field that well, and he's got a great arm and he can run. But he's not the guy that if you ask him to go out there and against a really good defense, make measured calls and read the defensive backfield, he's just not that great at it. So, but I mean, you've kind of gone all in on the transfer portal the last 2 years. And now you've lost those guys. You've got some big holes to fill, and they don't have that. They need an offensive line. But it's offensive lines, you can bring in a portal guy or two and have it make a difference for you. But, I mean, for the most part, you kind of need 3 or 4 out of the 5 starters to be these guys that have developed within your program and played together for it to be a really successful unit. And Colorado's an example of that. Florida State's an example of that. USC is an example of that. If Cignetti stays with the whole portal thing at Indiana, I think it's going to become problematic after a couple of years. I think if he goes, okay, I got a group of guys here. We've got some stability. We got some good athletes. They understand the system. Perfect. Now you can kind of go into that build and develop mode. And if he does that, it's going to be fun to see what happens at Indiana, as much as I say that to Nebraska.
You know what he needs to build besides stability with long-term players, probably a collective where you can pay players, because Indiana's got a nice budget. You still need extra money to pay people. Crazy day in college football over the weekend. I mean, Alabama got beat.
By Vanderbilt.
Yes.
How do you lose?
Classic
Vanderbilt.
Classic letdown game, right?
Yeah.
Vanderbilt's played teams tough. They got an innovative offense, but that's just bad. That's just really bad. I mean,
that was a bad, and I do think Kalen DeBoer is a great coach, and I think Alabama's a very good team. There's a reason they beat Georgia.
Yes, and they'll be there at the end.
Yeah,
they'll be in the playoff. You had Tennessee get beat. It went on the road. I mean, so now you got Texas back at number 1, Ohio State's number 2, Oregon's number 3. Just so many crazy games. The Miami-California game. Miami rallied from 25 points down. 25 down.
I mean, it was against Cal.
Yeah, but it was like 2 touchdowns with like 5 minutes to go in the game.
And that's a team I'm still having trouble figuring out how good Miami is.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Just it's who they've played. I mean, the quality of the schedule. They're still winning. They're undefeated, though. I mean, you play who's in front of you, and if you win them all, you win them all.
One of the big things that came out of Lincoln this past week, we talked about it briefly last week because we knew it was kind of going to happen, but the Board of Regents officially approved alcohol sales at football games and volleyball games for 2025.
And that's on-campus facility.
Yes.
So they've had it at basketball. They had it this past year at baseball. Those are not University of Nebraska-owned facilities.
So, but I need to caution people. I saw a headline today, and it was either on one of the TV stations or it might have been Omaha.com, where it said, hey, Nebraska could make $3 to $4 million a game off alcohol sales. That's not true. That's factually incorrect.
No.
The highest I think I've seen for a season is like $1.9 million. Alcohol is not going to be a windfall. You need to keep that in mind. It's about the fan experience. You're out there drinking in the parking lot anyway, and you're the last team in the Big Ten to authorize this. It's about fan experience. It's actually about controlling alcohol consumption. I saw a lot of people on Facebook going, this is the worst thing to happen. No, it's the best thing to happen, because if you say you can't leave at halftime, you don't get to go out and do your shooters in the parking lot.
These cost $8 to $12 a pop.
Yeah, pretty soon, and after the third quarter, you're done. It will limit alcohol consumption. I know it's and data has showed it, studies have showed it, but if you think it's going to be this huge financial windfall, it's not going to be. Nebraska got an infrastructure problem, though, Rob, because they were going to do all the stadium renovations. They put those on hold. Just serving alcohol like that is not an easy thing to do. I mean,
it's not, but I do think it's doable. I mean, I've looked at a lot of places that do it. There's ways to do it.
Yeah, you're going to have troughs with ice and just pull a can of Bud Light out. You can't run. You're not going to have draft beer. If you have draft beer, I want to know how you're going to do it. Because
and I agree in that regard, but I think there's ways to start off doing it that are old infrastructure friendly. I mean, you're gonna have to go with cans. I still think back to going to the Big Ten wrestling tournament a couple of years ago at Pinnacle Bank. It was all cans. They didn't have the draft stuff set up and running. It was all out of cans. It was clean. It worked. It was easy. That's not difficult to do. That's very doable. I think the infrastructure thing gets overplayed. You think of some of the music concerts they've had there at Memorial Stadium. They've served alcohol at those. It's very doable. They can do it. You just got to have to make the decision whether or not you're going to do it.
Don't kid yourself, though. The people in the suites and the club seats are going to be taken care of first.
Well, now, the other thing you said was you talked about the fan experience.
Yes.
And you don't serve alcohol because you're like, hey, we're going to make a bunch of money.
No, it's not a financial windfall.
Yeah, it's not this massive profit that you're going to end up making. They're going to make a profit off.
Yeah.
There's going to be a profit. It's a getting butts in seats thing is kind of the point you made, that's the reason you do it. You're doing it to make an overall enhancement to the fan experience. Let's get butts in the seats. Let's keep butts in the seats because that's ticket sales. It's other concession sales. That's
keep in
what
mind,
you got to have.
We're not saying there won't be drunk idiots, all right? There's always a fucking fool out there.
But there's drunk idiots now.
Yes. So
and statistically, if you look at the numbers at places that do it versus places that don't, the places where everybody's hammering them out in the parking lot before the game are the places that have the most alcohol-related incidents.
So don't come back as lectures and say, "Oh, this idiot." Yeah, there's going to be idiots. Just be prepared for it. But overall, this is actually a good thing. Trust us. I mean, they've been doing it at the College World Series for several years now. Many other
Nebraska,
events.
All basketball games have had alcohol.
You know, I mean, this was probably driven more by Tom Osborne than anything.
It is, and there's members of the Board of Regents I know that have. It hasn't been their cup of tea either. I mean, you had one member of the Board of Regents that voted against this, saying that she felt like we were selling our souls. I do disagree with that. I mean, it's kind of like what you. I mean,
it's like gambling, right? Well, I mean,
two things. I do believe you don't legislate morality, and this is a control upon things. This is a way to control alcohol consumption.
I forgot about this, but I do want to get this in before we wrap things up. Pat Clare passed away.
He did,
and just the impact with the team when you were there, impact he had on you.
Hard to put into words. I mean, he saved my football career. So, longtime head team orthopedic surgeon for Nebraska. I went to high school with Mike. Pat's would be his second youngest son. So, two of his sons are orthopedic surgeons as well. One is a lawyer and regent down in Lincoln. But great family, just great people. And like I said, Pat rebuilt both of my shoulders my junior year in high school.
So you trusted him. You knew when you went under the knife to him.
Oh yeah. He basically tacked about 10 to 12 years onto my football career.
I mean, totally devoted. I mean, just the outpouring of support that he got, and they put something on the goal.
Former Husker football player.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
did he inspire you at all to be a doctor, or did you talk to him about?
100%. I shadowed Pat as before I went to medical school. He wrote a letter of recommendation for me for medical school. Just an absolutely amazing guy. And I mean, the number of physicians that he mentored that came through that program. It's hard to put a number on it. The bigger thing about him was he was just really a great person. That was the thing I'll always remember about Pat.
All right. Boy, it's time for a bye week. We're going to be back next week. Just because the Huskers are taking a week off doesn't mean we're going to take a week
College
off.
football does not.
No, it does not. And so don't worry. We're going to be back next week with another Doc Talk podcast. Also, another Doc's Diagnosis. We'll really dive into Indiana and get ready for those. So make sure to check out the Doc's Diagnosis. They come out on Monday and Tuesday. Wednesday night, it's Behind the Point Spread with Scott Spreitzer. We're live as we go in deep to 5 football games, 1 in the NFL, 4 in college football. And, of course, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Just hit that subscribe button. It's very, very simple. It's not like you get notifications all the time. We're not going to be sending the emails. Just hit subscribe and help our viewership continue to increase. For Dr. Rob Zatechka, I'm Travis Justice. We will talk to you next week on the Doc Talk Podcast.